put it together, that sort of stuff. That's fine. Okay.
Getting ready to open up the webinar in a couple of seconds. I think we're already live. Alan's going to get that link from 30 seconds and give it to Tony in the chat so he can pass that on. And we're getting, it's loading right now. For everybody out there, we're going to be on YouTube, but they're not there yet, so it's okay. Tony, you okay? Has it got having a lot of fun with the conference? Yep. Good. All right, we're going.
Yeah, I've just seen YouTube come up live. That's good.
Very good. Yep. We're live on YouTube. Okay, and I'm going to start the webinar. For everybody out there, I think so. Something. Let's see here. Okay, very good. I think we're live. We're live on YouTube, and we have our Zoom session live, and we're opening up the doors. We'll be just starting the official show in about 8 minutes. So we do a pre-show as everybody's starting to come into the room and give everybody a chance to get settled in. We have a large crowd today, so if you have any friends who can't get in, tell them to go to our YouTube channel, 30-Minute Talks on YouTube. Alan?
Yeah, hi, Andy. Hi, Perry, and hi, Tony. We're looking forward to another exciting day, and it's really a great opportunity to be part of the first Asian Tourism Conference for 2020. And this is a special edition of a 30-minute show. We really look forward to three very interesting presentations later on, and also looking forward to the good news that Tony will share about us with a successful conference to date. So welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us.
Yes, absolutely. And I was really pleased to be speaking at the conference yesterday. So a great opening session. I must say, you know, doing these things online, it's very much the new normal. The challenge of going online, using different softwares, it's all a new world, particularly with the number of delegates that I think I had on there. So, Tony, it was a good start yesterday. I think so far, so good. It's been a busy day today as well, has it?
It was the same. Actually, today also it's a busy day. We have almost 200 plus participants today. So, but today's morning keynote also recorded almost 300 people. Yes.
Oh, fantastic. That's great to hear.
Yeah.
That's great to
hear. Going
hear.
very well. Yeah.
Excellent. And obviously the conference was a bit of a long time in the planning.
Yeah, it's almost three to 4 months planning of this conference. And we line up with all prominent speakers from different parts of the world, particularly from Asia and the Pacific region.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So Andy, how are things where you are?
I'm doing fine, and I'm going to say we're going to keep moving on here to the next one. Let's see what's good. So we have a lot of people signing in already. So let's tell them about all the wonderful schools we have from around the world that join us for this session every week. We have UNLV in Las Vegas, Nevada. We have Joji Iligan School from Davao, and also at this point, we see that. We want everyone to say hello by putting a greeting in the chat room. But if you have a question for the panelists throughout the session, then please use the question and answer button on the bottom. So we'll be doing that as we go through. So we have a lot of different groups here. And so please chat and say hello and let us know where you're from. And I'm working on a little technical issue. So I know Alan and Perry will keep going here for a little bit.
Absolutely. Thanks, Andy. And as Andy's just pointed out, thank you to everybody for joining us. And once again, don't forget, let us know where you're from. Let us know who you are. Use the chat functionality. We'd love to know a little bit more about yourself and what's happening in your part of the world. And as I said, we're moving towards an exciting show. This is the pre-show, and we have another 5 minutes to go on that. What about the ratings for last week, Perry?
Oh, good question. I'm just seeing if I can see the slide up there. There we go. Excellent. So for those of you who joined us last week, and if you didn't join us last week, our guest speaker was actually someone called Professor Mushtaq Al-Altabi. Now, Mushtaq was actually a former colleague of both myself, Dr. Andy, and also Tony's. He was the dean, in those days, the Dean of Engineering at Taylor's University, and now he is the provost down at Heriot-Watt University, which is an overseas branch campus of Heriot-Watt University in Edinburgh. And he was talking last week and gave us a very insightful challenge, really, as to where the world is going. And we were focusing last week on whether robots will be replacing people and so forth. So a great rating for Mushtaq last week, 9.6, fantastic. So it was really good to have him on. And a very thought-provoking 90 seconds as well. which got our average rating of 9.5, which I think is about ahead of where we've been in the past, hasn't it, Alan?
Absolutely. It was the first time we used pure video, and well done, Andy, on a challenge in 90 seconds. I'm sure that one took a little bit longer than 90 seconds to prepare.
Always does. And so, and we have some nice comments and quotes from last week. And again, everyone is participating today. When they complete the survey at the end of the program, you'll be able to put a quote in about the program and whatever you want, and when you complete your survey. But 30-minute talks is SSS. I didn't know what that was when I first saw it, but that is short, sensible, and sustainable. So Sheila from LPU Manila, thank you for that one. Another thought-provoking session in 30-minute talks, looking for the next and the next and the next session. So everybody's very excited. Alan, why don't you do the last two?
Why not? Thank you. 30-minute talks of endless and boundless possibilities from Ilna Rose Magno, Northern Iloilo Polytechnic State College, if I've got it right. And thank you for the life-saving information. Thank you very much for this very informative webinar. God bless, from Stephanie Pablo, Holy Cross College in Rosa. So thank you for, as always, joining us. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for filling out the surveys. And as is usual, we'll share with you a link later in the show about the survey from today's show. And we look forward to your comments and your continued participation. Thanks, Andy.
And today is a special day because what we've decided to do for the rest of this month until the end of the year is we're offering our e-certificate to everyone that participates in today's session. So even those people that are on YouTube, if they go to the link and do the survey and after the show, they can get an e-certificate. So this will be something that we're doing just for the rest of December. All of our academic partners in the past were the ones that only got certificates. So we've decided that because we have such a large crowd, we want everyone to have a memento from today's program. And so the key thing is when you complete the survey, you must put in your 3 key learnings. At the end of the program, we'll give you a QR code, we'll give you a link, and then you will be able to complete that survey so that you can receive an e-certificate. So fill it out carefully and take your time. And Tony, I know all your students are going to do a great job making sure that they fill out that survey.
Of course, they will do it. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
And of course, every week we do what we call our poll. And this is our fun poll. We always have a poll that sort of asks students where they are. And this week, because we're talking about COVID-19, we decided to rate your feelings about the current state of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we're going to turn on that poll so people can answer it. And the answers are a little bit different. The world is going to end soon. Some people may think that. Is it dark time? Okay, it might be a dark time. It's not too, it's not too bad. Life is getting better every day. I see things slowly getting back to normal, or some people might think everything is normal. So take a minute and answer that. And maybe Alan and Perry can tell us where you are in Australia and Malaysia.
Yeah, absolutely, Andy. Thank you very much. And I think a very interesting poll for today, because I'm watching now some of those comments have come through. Thank you for participating, everybody. I'm one of the fortunate ones where I live in Western Australia, and I think life is getting better every day. We've not been in too bad a situation, although we've certainly have some severe travel restrictions, still severe international travel restrictions, and domestic travel is slowly but surely returning to normal. What about yourself, Perry?
Well, I think Malaysia is in a different situation. On a scale of where things are at, I would say Malaysia, we get about 1,000 cases a day. We have got what we call red zones. And so travel is restricted between different areas. So, for example, my wife just has gone down to the other end of the country, but she still has to get police permission to drive down there because there will be various roadblocks. They're trying to open up, more travel, and this current situation will go on until December the 6th. So we're expecting the government to relook at things then. But as I said, the caseload has been remarkably stable, around about 1,000 cases a day, but they just can't seem to get on top of it. So it hasn't luckily got out of control, but neither can we kind of get it under control.
Well, according to the poll, it looks like right now the largest results. I'm going to end the poll right now, and let's let everybody see the results, because fortunately, a lot of people are starting to see things getting back to normal, and that's a very good sign. Some places everything is back to normal. So you know, and there's a few people think the world's going to end. I don't think the world's going to end, but I think it's good to see that everyone feels that everything's getting back to normal. And I think that was a good way to start, warm us up for today's program on the pandemic and tourism. Alan?
Absolutely. Thanks, Andy. And as we do every week, everybody, we take a few minutes break in a few seconds. This is just for us to get ready for the show and prepare. As we said, the show is usually recorded, and this is preparing for the recording. Don't forget throughout the show, use the chat functionality. But if you've got questions that you'd like us to answer through the show, please use the Q&A panel that enables us to pick up your questions as quickly as we can. And we'd like to keep the show, as we do every week, as interactive as possible, where we can answer as many questions as we can. So thank you again for your participation. As we've said at the start of the show, record participation today, which is really good to see. I know a large number of participants are using the live YouTube broadcast. But in addition to that, we look forward to another exciting show. Over to you, Andy.
Okay, and then we're going to have like 5 seconds of silence, and then Perry will open up the official show. So here we go.
Well, good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, wherever you happen to be in the world and you're joining us today. It's great to have yet another show of 30-minute talks. And this week, we're very privileged that we're going to be meeting and discussing with Dr. Tony Thomas from Mahatma Gandhi University in India. This is a special session of the first Asian Tourism Research Conference, which is currently being held at Mahatma Gandhi University in India. So it's great to be here this week again with another hopefully exciting and interesting discussion about where things are at with where things are going. Andy, it's great to have you back, and our two co-founders, Andy and Alan. Andy.
You know, yeah, actually, it's great to see Tony again. We worked together in the past in Malaysia. He's a good friend, and we're happy to support him. And Mahatma Gandhi University became an academic partner, and I know many of their students have been attending over the last few months, and they have a large number of people attending from the conference. So we're excited to have you here today, Tony. Looking forward to it. Alan?
Yeah. Thanks, Andy. And it's really good to see people from we've got 9, I'd say 10 or 11 countries, whole range of new participants today. I know we've had some people from Vietnam join us in the past, but I know we've got a number more, and we'll recognize some of our new academic partners later in the show today. But right now, great to see everybody. And apart from a slightly more relaxed condition in Australia in terms of COVID, we've also got good news about the summer coming around. So the weather's starting to improve slowly but surely.
All right, well, thanks for that, Alan. And look, it gives me a great pleasure to introduce Dr. Tony Thomas. Tony and I have worked together for many years when we were together at Taylor's University in Malaysia, as was Dr. Andy as well. So we have a bit of shared background there, and I know some of the other people speaking at the conference. And Tony, I know that gave you great insights, having been born and grown up and studied in India, to then, be in another part of Asia and to sort of get a wider perspective on how things are moving around across Asia and how the development of Asian tourism is moved ahead. So you recently returned to India. So tell us a little bit about your thinking behind starting up the first Asian Tourism Research Conference. Why did you think it was so needed?
Okay, thank you, Perry. Thank you, Alan, as well as Andy. So we moved at this idea of initiating Asian tourism research because of looking on all the aspects that we are seeing that there are research going on Asia Pacific region and rest of the world. But looking on that, currently there is a phenomenal changes happening in Asian region. If you look on that, this is one area, the tourism is started with a low-cost model, low-cost tourism, and the tourist behavior is also changing significantly. Like, the people are trying to find affordable luxuries, and middle class is more traveling, gender, as well as the many different countries of Asia is looking for economy, as well as the significant influence of the local community in terms of their, day-to-day survival. So looking on all these aspects, tourism in this part, in Asian region is actually going to be a different layer comparing to the true luxury which we are expecting from tourism. In this area that, Asians also need to look on that, how the research has to be developed. And the idea moved in order to enhance the research consultancy in travel and tourism in Asian region. looking on all these aspects. And another thing is that the academics in Asian region, the researchers and the scholars, they can mainly look on that because they are in Asia, so they have access to everything. Other than that, some people are coming from the outsider perspective and conducting some research here. And actually they can merge it together like both outsider as well as insider perspective. And the three main goal of the Asian tourism research is to conduct conferences like today. We have large number of participation yesterday as well as today, and number of scholars coming from different parts of the world as well. And to continue this conference every year, and after that, we also have the plan for consultancy projects in Asian regions based on collaborating with different academic institutions as well. And the third one
Tony,
is
so just as you said, tourism has been growing so much, and certainly in Asia, this has been, dare I say, the fastest growing region in the world for tourism development.
Exactly.
Obviously, we've got two very, very large countries in this part of the world, India and China.
Exactly.
Between them, each one's got about 1.3, 1.4 billion people, plus then the rest of Southeast Asia, big countries like Indonesia. So, a very large part of the world's population is based here. Historically, most of the tourism research and work hasn't actually come out of this part of the world. It's been coming out of Europe, North America, Australia, etc. So pushing on the conference here, was this part of the goal so we can focus more research on what is happening in this part of the world? Because as you were saying, and I think as the opening presentation yesterday by Professor John Tribe was pointing out, much of the views, the thinking, the methodology, the ideas has come from a more Western perspective. And yet where we're actually seeing tourism grow has been from a more Asian perspective. How are you going to try and help to marry these different perspectives, and given what's happening in this region?
I also believe so, and I agree with that it's more dominated by other regions of the world. And in fact, this is a humble beginning here, because everything is actually started and growing, initiating and growing. So we are actually, putting the seeds to start some kind of research here. In order to do that, we're also planning to launch a journal in Asian tourism research. So this journal is actually one main point where the research can hook themselves to conduct research as well as publish, as well as make this, research in this region more prominent, and shout loud to other regions of the world. In fact, there are so many areas to collaborate with Asia as well as the rest of the world. It can be Europe. Like, for example, benchmarking the different type of tourism and how it is growing in one side and how it is reshaping in Asia. So these all aspects are coming together to this particular journal, which is the main focus as well.
Yeah. Well, as you said, things have changed quite a bit. And as an editor of a journal, I now receive, I've been an editor for over 20 years, the Journal of Aviation Marketing. 20 years ago, nearly all my papers came in from the UK, US, and then, some were coming in those early days from Australia. The shift now, then it became more dominated out of Australia. I got papers from North America. Now my dominant country is China. That's where I'm getting the most number of papers from. India is actually quite way behind, but I'm beginning to see more and more research come out of there, as I do across Southeast Asia. So I think, again, in the research side of things are certainly changing. And obviously, given what's happened with COVID this year, this has been a significant challenge across the region. And, obviously, as the schools have raised in reputation from research, we're also seeing that coming up in the rankings. And actually, we've got our next 30 minutes is going to be looking at this issue of rankings. But today, our focus is going to be very much on what's happening across the region and different parts of the Asia-Pacific region and how COVID has impacted us. So I think that's, I'm going to take a little bit of a focus on that. It was wonderful, and thank you, Tony, for the opportunity to be the opening keynote speaker at the presentation yesterday. But clearly, this has brought us to an interesting challenge in terms of where we're going. Andy, you want to say hello to a few people?
Yeah, we always like to thank our academic partners, and I know that this will be the first Asian Tourism Research Conference for Tony, but it's the first of many in the future, and we hope that you'll have the opportunity to share some of our academic partners. We hope that they'll come support you too. But we have everyone from the Macau Tourism and Hospitality Association. We have CoRep. We have Silver Mountain from Nepal, University of Bahamas, the ICE, which is the accreditation body, the hotel, University of Hawaii at Manoa, the School of Hotel Management there. We have University of Santo Tomas, LPU, Joji Iligan. We have so many, we'll save some for the end. But we always appreciate all of our academics partners. Without them, it wouldn't be possible to have this program.
Absolutely. And so let's move on now. So we've got our next one, which is always our weekly of 90 seconds.
Yeah, actually, you know, this one is this week's 90 seconds. It's a little bit different for all of those students and everyone working on projects. I created this 90 seconds to help you be more successful when you're trying to get your projects done. So I'll ask everybody to shut off their videos for a second, and then we'll play our 90-second video. Then we'll start the program. Welcome to 90 Seconds. I'm Dr. Andy Nazarchuk, and today I will share advice on how to improve your focus when studying or working on a project. Nikola Tesla, a genius electrical engineer, said, "If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration." The universe vibrates at 432 hertz. This frequency is pleasing, reduces stress, and promotes emotional stability. You can listen to this popular sound 17 million others have on YouTube. Different frequencies, known as binaural beats, can also cause different reactions. You will find that if you can focus on your project or studying for 90 minutes, then take 20 minutes off and continue this cycle, you will be more productive. You may have seen singing bowls used by monks to enhance their spiritual environment. Many people find these sounds helpful when they meditate. While you could find some bowls and sit on the ground making different sounds, I prefer a comfortable chair with my headphones and listen to the variety of options on the internet. Of course, some say that binaural beats can solve many different problems. I don't know anything about that, but I do know that when I'm working on a project and listening, it does help me focus. My favorite on YouTube is Time, 10 hours, with music from the movie Inception. No videos, I find them distracting. Tesla also said, "Our senses enable us to perceive only a minute portion of the outside world." Get your headphones, find some binaural beats online, and get your work done. I'm Dr. Andy Nazarchuk, and this is 90 Seconds. And I hope that helps everybody to get a little studying done. Give it a try. You'll find that's a different one. We try to do something a little bit outside the box every week, and I think that one was pretty far outside the box. Hope you enjoyed that. Perry, we'll turn it over to you, and then you can decide. We'll start doing our presentations on our tourism and their.
Okay, I'll just share my screen.
Just while Perry's doing that, I might say to everybody that's sitting around watching the show for today, if you've got headphones, grab them and put them on for the show, because I've got a video that I'd like to share with you later on that sounds better through the headphones. So if you don't have headphones, no problems. Enjoy the show. But if you do have headphones, take an opportunity to put them on and use them when I start my presentation. Thanks, Perry.
Okay, thank you. Now, hopefully, Alan, can you see my screen on that?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks,
that's great. Just wanted to make sure. So look, today what we wanted to focus on was what is happening around Asia, to tie that into the theme of the conference, to give a little bit of an insight into what's happening in different parts of the Asia Pacific region, some of the challenges, some of the issues that are coming up in different countries. So I'm going to focus, as I'm based here in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, my focus is going to be what's been happening here. So where I want to start is one of the biggest challenges when we started 30 Minutes Talks going back to April now. As the world shut down, obviously airlines were one of the first parts of the tourism industry that was hardest hit, with over 16,000 planes being parked up. And of course, the airline losses this year are going to be significant. So IATA just released a report this week indicating that airlines are going to lose about 118.5 billion this year. So this has been pretty significant. As you can see, airlines have significantly cut their costs. So about 45%, about half of it, they managed to do that. But revenues are down a massive 60%. And remember, they were able to fly for a couple of months. So the result is that, as you can see, airlines are losing money on every single passenger they fly. And of course, you can't run and keep running a business on that basis. So Malaysia, like a lot of other countries, is very dependent on air transport to bring in its tourism. In fact, Malaysia was one of the top 10 countries in tourism arrivals. back in 2018. So one of the challenges now is where things are at. So let's just look and have a quick look at how bad things have got. So last week, I took my own daughter down to the airport. She was flying back to Australia. This was quite challenging to organise. We had to organise flights 2 months out. 5 days before she was due to fly to Adelaide, there was an outbreak in Adelaide in Australia and all the flights were cancelled. Fortunately, we were able to rebook her on a flight to Sydney as they opened up some more quarantine. As you can see from my slide there, that is pretty much the entire day's flights out of what was one of the world's largest and major international airports. So getting to the airport is quite a surreal experience. So you tend to find that it's quite empty. So arriving at a major international airport that I've flown out of many times, which is really deserted, probably half the lights aren't even on. So not only do you notice a lack of passengers, that also means that many of the businesses there can't be open. So restaurants, shops are pretty much closed up. For people who are traveling, well, different people have got different styles. Well, as you can see here, quite a few people have decided to go for the full PPE look with goggles, etc. So this is by no means now unusual. And you can see a lot of people are very concerned about when they're traveling, how many people they're coming into contact with. So this is quite an interesting sort of thing to suddenly see down at the airport. As you can see here from the outbound immigration area, well, there's just 2 people down there. So this was a busy World International Airport. And these slides, as you saw in our first poll, you know, can be quite depressing. Because clearly, if you're about an industry that's moving people and we're not moving people, this has a huge flow-on effect to all the other aspects of the tourism industry at the moment. So sticking with the airline industry, what's the situation here in Malaysia? Well, of course, Malaysian Airlines has been in trouble, to be honest, for a few years. Sadly, a couple of incidents a few years ago substantially hurt the brand. And so going into the COVID situation was following a further restructuring which had happened a couple of years ago. The challenge facing Malaysian Airlines, like many other airlines, is that they don't actually own their planes. So many international airlines own some planes, they lease many of the other planes. So some airlines are totally leased, relatively few own all their own planes these days, most have got some sort of mixture. So the problem that the leasing companies are faced with at the moment is, of course, that if they take the planes back, then who are they going to give them to? So they're going to have to be responsible for parking them somewhere. So as I mentioned in my opening bit, there's already 16,000 planes that are parked around the world. The current situation is that if the next restructuring plan, which essentially is a discussion. So back in October, Malaysian Airlines started its discussion with its lessors about what is the plan. Now, in this case, Malaysian Airlines owns about half its planes. It leases about half of them. So if the lessors, the people who own the planes, demand them back, then what's going to happen to the airline? And as you can see there, basically plan B is to actually move the planes that they own under a different license. So in fact, it's a business discussion now about what's going forward, because the challenge is we don't know when the vaccine is going to roll out. We don't know how effective it's going to be. And one of the biggest challenges with the vaccine, which probably hasn't been so widely discussed in the media, is that it may protect you from the virus. It doesn't necessarily mean it will protect you continuing to give the virus to other people. So here in Malaysia, one of the issues here is that Firefly is a subsidiary. Probably what Malaysian Airlines will do is to move the planes that it owns under its own subsidiary, which is a company called Firefly, which typically runs turboprop aeroplanes, but it is a subsidiary. And you're seeing around the world, different airlines are in very different situations. So Thai Airlines, again, financially in very deep financial trouble. Basically, that's going on through a reorganization. You've got AirAsia in India, which is going through a similar situation after AirAsia has announced it's closing down its subsidiary in Indonesia and also in Japan. So these are some of the challenges that are happening in terms of what's going on. So domestic tourism is where we can move things. And in part of our opening discussion there, one of the situations in Malaysia at the moment is that, well, national borders are closed, very difficult to enter the country, or for Malaysians to leave the country. So international flying is very, very limited. What the focus has been on is what we can do for domestic tourism. So the country has got various red zones and green zones. And the challenge is if you have to go through a red zone to get to another a green zone. So that's a particular domestic challenge at the moment. But the idea, and the government relaunched the Cutie Cutie Malaysia campaign. Now, this campaign had actually been used before, back in 99, 2004, 5. And again, the idea has been to push that. And so just the other day, Malaysian Airlines went out with an offer of 50 ringgit, which is about 15 US dollars, something like that, to try and give these out. So to try and get people feeling comfortable to get the market to fly again. So what we're seeing is enormous downward price pressure, but I think where the airlines are coming from is that they just want to get people flying again. So they're putting out a lot of deals at the moment. So that 50 ringgit will in fact get you to a domestic location, as you can see there, with prices down 39 ringgit to fly. So again, it's trying to get the market back. But of course, a lot of the concern is really about people feeling safe to travel. And as we've discussed on 30 Minutes over many weeks, it's about not just being able to afford to fly, it's do you feel safe to fly and safe to travel. So it doesn't matter what business you're in, and I was quite interested to get this from Grab, which dominates the market here in Malaysia. And this was very much, again, focused on travel safety. So if you want to call a Grab hire car, you know, it's a question about has that car been properly sanitized? And it's not just clearly that Grab's in that space, but also AirAsia as well. And this was some information I received from them, which was about an end-to-end safe and contactless journey. So again, they're trying to make sure that everyone is feeling about safe to travel. And that message keeps coming through again and again. Now, several months ago, the tourism sector here started to look about how it could replan its way forward. And I think at that time, many people had hoped that by now we would be moving out of the pandemic situation. So whilst task forces were set up, the main focus has been on domestic, because clearly the international travel is highly constrained in terms of what's going. One of the good signs to this has been that in many cases, it's helped the environment to recover. And there's been various photographs that went around a few months ago, and some people were wondering whether they've been doctored, whether it's true or not. This is a very busy place called Malacca. And so the question here has this become actually a cleaner place thanks to actually the downturn in tourism? And we've seen this in other parts of the world as well, is that nature is able to recover from this pandemic. And so maybe these are some lessons that we've got to start thinking about as well. More recently, one of the controversial things that's come up here has been this discussion about what to do in terms of strategy. And a couple of days ago, there was a letter that actually went out in one of the newspapers here, which was put out by a couple of academic colleagues at another university, and who were suggesting some ideas about what the industry needed to do. Introduce new initiatives, help the hoteliers, travel agencies need to become more digitally focused, etc. What was interesting was this started a bit of a war of letters, actually. And there's been other people coming in saying, look, there's no substantive grounds for this. And pointing out that many restaurants have closed, the hotels that have survived closed. In other words, was the right strategy for many people to actually bunker down. And in previous 30 Minutes talks, we've talked about this issue of hibernated. And I've outlined at the end of his letter a couple of key points that this person's made, which is, you know, that so many businesses have been obliterated, and that the reality is that many businesses could not only survive for a few months. So rather than accumulate losses, do you actually stop the business to conserve your cash? So this has been the debate here about whether you keep struggling on or do you face the current situation. Some of the companies have looked to move, and one that I've already mentioned is AirAsia, and AirAsia has actually decided to move outside of just its main core business, which has been flying people. So actually before COVID started, it started to focus on its airline food. The reality in many businesses that airline food has been regarded as a bit of a joke. So it was quite an interesting statement for AirAsia to say, we believe that our budget, and remember they're a low-cost carrier of food, is outstanding. And they've created a fast food chain, which is called Santan, which is named after the food that they serve on the plane. And their goal has been to actually take on
Western fast food restaurants by serving airline food. And this was the first of the ones that was opened just last year. This is the menu. Their goal is to open up about 100 of these franchise stores, not only in Malaysia, but overseas as well. And it's quite interesting because obviously I fly with AirAsia a lot. This is me standing outside their restaurant, which is just at the back of the university I work at. So you can begin to see that they've realized, and what they've also been able to do is they've made priority hiring for a number of their staff who used to work with AirAsia. So Malaysia is in that sort of space at the moment. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an insight to how things are in the situation here. So I think that will hopefully give you just enough information and just an insight into the situation that Malaysia is facing. Alan and Andy, we'll just break at that point. Alan, situation in Australia, and Andy, where are you at?
Yeah, well, sorry, Andy, go on.
You brought a lot of good points, so I think I'm going to tell a different story. So let me do my presentation now and tell about when, as domestic tourism starts to increase, the good things and bad things that can happen. So let me give that a try. And so I'm going to be talking about the Philippine tourism in the past and present. And this is the one example I'm going to be sharing with you is going to be with about Boracay. And a lot of people have heard of Boracay, but let's see what it looked like in the old days. So I want you to think of a beautiful beach. This is a picture of many years ago of Boracay, one of the most famous, beautiful beaches in the world. And so when you have something that becomes famous, everyone wants to go see it. That's why tourism is so popular. And of course, the first resort on Boracay was Fridays. It was a beautiful resort built on the beach. Back then, it was very difficult to get to Boracay. A lot of people had to fly to a different island, take a boat over. It was very expensive. So it was still a beautiful place to go. And there were beautiful rocks in the ocean, and they started to build. You can see here the rail for safety. You didn't want people falling into the water, so they built these rail, which is a good idea for safety of the tourists. Let everybody see the beautiful sights that you couldn't see from the beach. But then it started to become popular, and people started to build more resorts. Now, I don't know about you, but this resort is built into the side of the mountain, and it's really kind of a different kind of hotel. I don't really like it, never liked it, and then it got worse and worse. So you think about it. You have a beautiful beach, you have a beautiful destination, and then you start to build these very ugly, unsustainable structures. And look at this. They take the rocks, and instead of leaving it there as a part of the natural scenery, they make it into a place where you can go take pictures and have some food. So they destroy the natural beauty in order to get more tourists. And this is what can happen in India and other countries when you start to see people going to new destinations and everyone trying to become a destination. They think that it's easy, but if you don't have the right plans in place, it can become a mess. Now, this is one picture of Boracay. The beach you could see is getting more crowded. Look at the number of boats in the beach and how many people are there. More and more people started to come on tourists and on group tours. Thousands and thousands of people come every day. Now, when you have thousands and thousands of people, that causes a lot of problems. One, there's safety problems, there's crime problems, there's pollution problems. And you can see here the vendors covering the beach with their boats trying to give people rides. This was total tourism chaos. And this causes a lot of problems. And the best way I could describe this, I took this first picture many years ago, Keep Boracay Beach Clean. It's a beautiful way. It's really made concrete to prove that everybody's going to think. But when you have too many people, you can't keep Boracay clean. It's the same picture a year later, and you can see that they could not keep up with the volume of tourists. You need more resources to take care of more tourists, and that becomes an important part of the tourism picture. But what happens, the smaller operators that we used to love to go visit in the early days, they started to disappear. And who replaces them? So you go to some tropical island and there's a Starbucks. That's not the kind of tourism experience that a lot of people want. Or if you, instead of the local food, it's a commercial pizza place. Yes, these are great places and urban places, but you really need it on a beautiful beach in a tropical setting. So let's look at this picture. If you look at the picture on the left, that was Boracay before tourism. And you can see the beautiful beach, the beautiful greenery. And then if you look at the picture 15 years later, the island is covered with golf courses, resorts, residences, and it became too much for this little island in the middle of the ocean. So what happened? And this is the part you have to remember. Boracay was named one of the best beaches in the world many years, and it's happened several times. And so when people see this, the whole world, everyone wants to travel to the best beach. Well, what happens if you don't have green goals or enforced regulations that protect your tourism destination? This has happened in Boracay in 2018. Too many people, yes. And one of the things about too many people is they all have to go to the bathroom. It's just a fact of life. And so what happens? Well, where does it go? The sewage started to go, they started to put it into the ocean. So take a look at some of these photos and think about it. This is the most beautiful beach in the world. And because there's so many tourists there, they have to put the sewage onto the beach. Uncontrolled, unregulated, totally destroying the water. You can see the pollution going into the water. And look at how green the beach has become because of the algae, because of the high bacteria count. It's a horrible situation. And this all happened because the island didn't set the standards, they didn't protect themselves, and they destroyed the one thing that made them famous around the world. Now, can you save yourself from this? This becomes an interesting story. The president of the Philippines, President Duterte, he said that he is going to close Boracay because he realized that Boracay is a cesspool. And in February of 2018, he made the unprecedented decision to close one of the most major tourism attractions around the world. An absolutely aggressive and amazing decision. Now, of course, as soon as he said that he was going to close it, the people on the island who was going to lose jobs said, oh, we'll clean it up. We'll clean it up. Too late. They should have kept it clean before it got this bad, because you can't trust people to take care of it if that's the way it's going to be. So that thousands of jobs were lost, millions of dollars were lost. And he ordered Boracay closed for 6 months starting in April 26 of 2018. The decision was made. The island was shut off. You couldn't fly into the island. Boats couldn't go on. If you didn't have the right pass and you weren't a resident, you couldn't even get on that island. And that gave the island time to recover. And so it became an international story. All of those places that I showed you before, they started to tear them down and remove them to bring it back to the natural beauty that was many years ago. But you spend more money tearing it down than preventing it from being built in the first place. So it's one of those things you have to remember. Now, when they reopened Boracay, they had so many new rules. They had no smoking. No drinking on the beach. No fires on the beach. You had to have a hotel booking before you came on the island. All the buildings had to be green. So a lot of things in order to protect the beach, which is good, which could have been done the first time. But they also started to create too many rules. It became so restrictive that some of the things that people went to Boracay for, it wasn't happening anymore. This is an example. People used to build these sandcastles, and yes, it was a tourism gimmick, and people would go over, and then they would charge you for a picture with it. You know, those are the kind of stories a lot of people tell when they go onto a beach. But this is a picture of Boracay in 2020. If you notice that the beach is empty, the structures that were on the beach were taken away. So they really did a great job in getting it back to the natural beauty. But what happened? Well, COVID-19 happened. Now, because of the lack of transportation, as Professor Hobson mentioned, planes weren't flying, people aren't traveling. So all the things that were keeping this island busy have completely stopped. Now, this is not only a problem, it is an opportunity, because now they have to be much more careful and have to be much more positive to attract tourists to their island. Now, the nice thing about that this experience worked out so well that other destinations around the world wanted to learn how it was done. Now, some of you may have seen this movie a few years ago, Phi Phi Island in Thailand. And if you remember the beach, the famous beach, Leonardo DiCaprio. It was a beautiful beach and they had fun there. And so everybody in the world wanted to go see this beach. And there's an aerial view of the beach and you can see the white sands, the clear view water, a wonderful place to go for a vacation. Except if you look at this picture, the beach is covered with boats because so many people wanted to go see this beach that they no longer could see the beach because it was covered with the speedboats that brought the tourists to this destination. They destroyed the destination again, but they learned from the Philippines. And what they learned was that too many people coming and destroyed the place that you want to do. They had to make some changes. And what change did they make? They decided to move all access from the Maya Beach permanently. So you could no longer drive your boat into this little bay. What you had to do is you had to drive on the other side of the island and the tourists would have to walk over. So that was one example of how they changed one aspect of it to protect the beautiful beach, because that's what people are going there to see. Now, in the Philippines, back to the Philippines, what's next? Well, this was a couple of years ago, but they said that they were going to redo Manila Bay. If they could do it in Boracay, they figured we could do it in Manila because the Manila Bay was a horrible, dirty bay. And they said, let's see if we can fix it. So they decided in the last year to start bringing in sand and covering this beach and cleaning it up. And so has it been successful? Oh, you know, it looks much better. There are some issues with the way they did it and comments from a lot of people, but at least they are trying to make this a beautiful place again because Manila is a wonderful city. It has great attractions, but it needs to clean itself up and provide things that people can go and have some enjoyment. So for all of you out there, if you go to the UN, they have the Sustainable Development Goals. All of these different goals are interesting. You should go visit their website and check things out so you can start to think about how you will do it in your destination. And I hope that you will protect what you have and your future will be bright, because many of the different destinations all have the same issues. People want to go see it. People want to destroy it. And if the locals allow that to happen, then it causes bigger problems than it's worth. So I hope you'll have a successful tourism destination. And I look forward to hearing some of your comments.
Thanks so much for that, Andy. And I think you've, having been to Boracay and Manila on many occasions and seeing the challenges those destinations have had, as well as that Maya Beach near Krabi as well, where, again, to come back to our point at the opening, the number of people in this part of the world. Now, over-tourism has happened in many places. And in fact, probably if we'd been having this conference a year ago, most of focus would have been on over-tourism rather than the problem of no tourism. And as highlighted there, Andy, I think you made some excellent points about the challenge that Boracay has gone through as a really fantastic case study of what can happen and how tourism has to get back in terms of managing tourism rather than just letting it run. Alan, back down in Australia, how are things down there?
Yeah, thanks, Perry and Andy. Two very interesting presentations. What I might do is move straight into my presentation because I'm seeing some really good questions come up through our participants today. So if I move into mine and then we'll deal with those questions afterwards. So let me do that right now.
Okay.
So thank you again, Perry and Andy, for your thought-provoking presentations. And I think some really innovative ideas have been undertaken both in Malaysia and, of course, in the Philippines, and particularly on the island of Boracay, a pristine area that I think no doubt has suffered from over-tourism and has been a model that, as you said, has been used throughout the world. So the coronavirus, or COVID-19, has had significant impact on the tourism and hospitality industry throughout the world. And I guess Australia has not been immune to those impacts. So international travel to Australia has been severely impacted due to the Australian border closures, and Australia's domestic tourism has also been impacted. And I'll talk about that as I go through. So today, what I'd like to do is share with you some of the Australian trends and strategies being developed to help tourism recovery. And I'd also like to acknowledge that the role of domestic travel in Australia, that is the tourism recovery, has been explored by myself. And I've used a number of reports, including the Tourism Research Australia report, the Deloitte report, Ernst Young report, the KPMG report, and I've also referring to the UNWT report that Andy picked up there. I think these are really important places for students and faculty and colleagues to visit in terms of having a look at some of the hard work that's been done up until now on ways that certain destinations, countries can emerge from COVID-19. So as a quick background in the Australian context, February 2020 saw a significant decrease in international tourism due to the effects of the coronavirus, and approximately 647,000 international visitors travelled to Australia, which is already down 18% when compared to February 2019. And that was very, very early part in the year when the word coronavirus has almost not been understood. International arrivals in March 2020 saw a further dramatic decrease. So between February and March, the numbers kept going down, significantly impacting Australia's tourism industry, with a 59.9% drop when compared to the March 2019. So we're already down on average 60% on international visitors. On March 20th, the Australian government restricted entry to only citizens, residents and immediate families. So that impacted international arrivals again significantly. And on March the 25th, Australian citizens and residents were also banned from travelling overseas. So pretty well borders were closed. This trend has continued downwards since this time, and the net effect has seen a reduction with an average of about 25% reductions in revenues in international tourism to June 2020. And since June 2020, a continued downward trend into the September 2020 quarter. So in addition to the impact of the international tourism, lockdowns across Sydney, Melbourne, and now South Australia, these have all had significant impacts on domestic travel restrictions that have also been imposed by the Australian government. And they are, of course, also having dramatic effects on the domestic travel industry and tourism in general now. So border closures negatively impacted the interstate market, and lockdowns impacted the intrastate market. Of course, the social distancing measures meant travellers had less opportunity to participate in a range of activities. Capital cities had greater losses in terms of domestic overnight visitors than regional areas. But in general, you can see that the numbers in that snapshot there are down quite significantly through to June 2020. And of course, in the accommodation sector, visitor nights fell by 15% for the year to June 2020, and 62% or 64 million for the June quarter 2020. So again, all of these numbers are down and showing negative growth. This is clearly evidenced by the significant decreases experienced in the June quarter when COVID was just starting to impact the sector, with the hotel and resort sector being the worst affected. And that's shown in that very simple graphic there. So with that as a bit of the background, and with the ongoing devastation to the tourism industry and, well, I guess a return to domestic travel and tourism is seen as one of the key strategies to kickstarting the travel and tourism industry now. Let's firstly take a look at a recent 90 seconds video that I prepared some weeks ago, using some of the key recommendations from UNWTO, Understanding Domestic Tourism and Seizing Its Opportunities. That's the title of the report. I think the short video provides some insight into domestic strategies that have been recommended and all being used in countries throughout the larger Asia Pacific region. So let's have a quick look at this 90 seconds video that I prepared. Welcome to another 90 seconds, presented by myself, Alan Williams. Today I'm going to consider domestic tourism as a strategy for post-COVID-19 recovery by sharing with you some of the ideas recently published by the UNWTO in their briefing note, Understanding Domestic Tourism and Seizing Its Opportunities. In 2018, an estimated 9 billion domestic overnight visitors were recorded around the world, of which well over 50% were in the Asia-Pacific region. Domestic tourism, by definition, comprises the activities of a resident visitor within the country of reference. In OECD countries, spending on domestic tourism is 3 times the amount generated from inbound tourism. Many of these countries are now recognising that increasing domestic tourism offers significant opportunities to restart tourism post-COVID-19. The promotion of domestic tourism is in many cases the first step to restart tourism. In Australia, this is expected to be followed by initiatives intended to attract international tourists, most likely in the first instance from within the travel bubbles that Australia is seeking to establish. Financial incentives are amongst the most common measures adopted by many countries to stimulate domestic tourism. For example, the government of Thailand announced it will subsidise 5 million nights of a hotel accommodation at 40% of the normal room rates, with certain caps on the room rate and maximum spend. The second most common strategy is developing domestic marketing and promotional campaigns. For example, in New Zealand, citizens are encouraged to do something new, New Zealand, and the government has allocated $1 million New Zealand for this domestic campaign. Here's a quick preview.
Plateau Hut is one of the most beautiful spots in New Zealand, and that's on my to-do list.
Go in a forest and see kiwis.
Taking them to the snow, that would be magical.
I want to go to Rotorua to see those mud pools.
There are a number of additional case studies contained in the UNWTO report. I would encourage you to consider these to help kickstart tourism post-COVID-19 by seizing on the many domestic tourism ideas and opportunities available. Thank you for watching another 90 seconds. So, as has been suggested in that 90 seconds, and indeed implemented by many countries across the globe, including now, I know the government of India, Philippines, New Zealand, and Thailand, domestic tourism is considered an integral part in kickstarting tourism. So let's just talk a little bit more about some of those strategies that were mentioned in the video, including some of the marketing strategies, the government support, and some of the incentives that have been provided. And in doing that, I'd like to explore some of the domestic strategies that are being used in Australia at the moment. So with the reduction in travel restrictions in Australia and a number of states and territories being classified as now very low risk, and I guess this is still a moving space as far as Australia is concerned. So in fact, from Tuesday, the 8th of December, travel from Victoria and New South Wales will be classified as very low risk, subject to no further outbreaks. And where I live in Western Australia, the government has recently introduced the G2G Pass and G2G app, which allows people to travel and self-isolate, but it gives the police department an ability to track those people in what they're doing, how they're isolating, and so on. So there's some many things coming into place in terms of managing the processes. But I think it's important to know that the relaxing of these rules does open up a whole range of new domestic travel opportunities in the first instance for Australia. And the preference of Australians to travel with family and friends could also see people favour holiday homes over large commercial accommodation or hotels. Now, this might not be great news for the hotel industry, but in the first instance, it's considered that visitors might feel that they have more control over the hygiene-related safety. And if they can preserve greater physical distances between themselves and others, that sort of accommodation might be more popular to start with. But one of the challenges facing the industry in Australia includes maintaining a viable workforce. So since March 2020, the Australian government has really been quite effective in terms of early days of the pandemic, supporting the workforce in forms of the JobKeeper and JobSeeker packages that has been really important in moderating the job losses and helping businesses get through the difficult period. There is some concern, however, whether or not these government assistance packages will last long enough to see the employment demand increase and employment levels return to pre-COVID times in the sector. But at least for the moment, the support has gone a long way to support employers in the industry and keeping a lot of people in our industry in work. As Perry's mentioned, and I think it's really important to recognise, because of the vast size of Australia, the aviation industry plays a pivotal role to the recovery of the travel tourism industry. And Australians travelling overnight accounted for 84% of the trips on domestic flights in 2019. Almost half of this was for business travel and typically generally on the main capital city routes. So while the Australian government has also supported the sector, it has already provided $150 million to support 2 aviation programs targeting main domestic routes and essential service routes. And it's also trying to pick up regional services so it can support remote communities as a separate entity. The government has now also committed to injecting a further $250 million into boosting regional tourism. And as part of this tourism program, and announced only this morning, from March the 1st, 2021, travellers will finally have a high quality, reliable and affordable airline to fly between Australia's capital cities. And whilst this may not seem unusual to many of you, in Australia, this has been very unusual with the closure of, and as I said before, closure of domestic travel and the restrictions imposed on inter and interstate travel. So tickets for Rex air services between Sydney and Melbourne will go on sale as of today, the 2nd of December. And this is, again, exciting news. The importance of the airline industry to tourism in Australia is undeniable. And it is widely recognised that in order for the aviation industry to fully recover, a global recovery will be essential. Business leaders and business travel are all grappling with the realities of having their premises and having their premises shut down and having to relocate staff to their homes. And I guess everybody knows that experimenting with new ways of working and the realities of having to lay off vast numbers of staff have become a reality of COVID-19. So some important questions that have emerged as a result of these trends include, Will the emerging digital work practices last beyond COVID-19? So what will be the future workforce and what will it look like? Will businesses learn from this pandemic and be more resilient in the future? And will this technology become the norm? And will people need to travel as much for business travel in the future? And if not, that means that recovering that significant market segment will become more difficult. In terms of domestic marketing strategies being developed in Australia, there's nothing like Australia. It's Australia's current global brand platform, highlighting some of the very best attractions and experiences that Australia has to offer. In addition to this, however, there are a number of new campaigns that have been developed to increase domestic tourism during this time. And we saw that one of the strategies suggested is marketing to your domestic population. One of those 4 strategies, and there's many strategies that the Tourism Australia are using, is the Experience Australia in 8D sound. Others include Holiday Here this year, There's Still Nothing Like Australia, and Live from Australia. Let's have a quick look. And this is where I mentioned before, if you've got headphones, quickly put them on. This is a quick 1-minute video for you to look at, and then we'll wrap up the presentation. And if you're lucky enough to have a set of headphones, you might have picked that up in at least stereo or quadraphonic sound if you had something a little more sophisticated. But that's one example of encouraging domestic tourism and some of the marketing campaigns that have been used. But I guess as a final note to tourism recovery, the importance of the international traveller should not be underestimated. So whilst domestic tourism and the resurgence of domestic tourism being used as a kickstart to restarting the tourism industry within Australia, we should not forget the importance of international travel. So it is anticipated that international travel will face a slow and gradual recovery. And as countries prepare to reopen with the recent announcements of a number of effective vaccines, or what we're hoping to be effective vaccines, important international considerations are emerging. So Australia is considered to have a comparative advantage in terms of safety. So even before the pandemic, health and safety were already one of the main considerations in selecting Australia as a destination. Post-pandemic, we believe that this will be even stronger and that these demand drivers will allow Australia to regain some market demand a little more quickly than other potential markets. I think timing is absolutely critical. There's a risk of reputational damage, and this really depends on how countries manage their COVID infections and so on. And if you open up too quickly, well, then we do nothing to stop the virus. Outbound travel will recover comparatively quickly with higher travel inclinations, and that's really because we have a very multicultural society and a very large migrant-based population and I guess, remote location, Australia being an island right down the south of the globe. It's expected that Australians will return to outbound travel faster than some of the other countries. And you can see that some of our nationalities include the UK population, the Italian population, Singaporean, and many other Southeast Asian countries that live here in Australia now and have settled here. But beware, as part of this, distance and price are a disadvantage. Australia is a remote destination that is still comparatively expensive. And as previously pointed out, Australia depends on an international aviation network, and particularly on hub aviation services based out of UAE and Singapore. So gearing up the massive infrastructure of these air travel hubs to service international air travel requires much more than a surge in demand just purely from Australia. It requires a global tackling of the current coronavirus. Again, As part of restarting international tourism, apart from the existing arrangements with New Zealand for inbound travel, Australia is also discussing travel bubble arrangements with other countries, including Japan, South Korea, Singapore, and Taiwan. And those travel bubbles will go a long way to, if they work, helping Australia re-emerge in the international markets. But again, finally, thank you to Dr. Tony Thomas for inviting this edition of 30 Minutes Talk to be part of the first Asian Tourism Conference for 2020. And we really hope that you have a successful conference. And Andy and Perry, let's take some questions.
Well, thanks very much for that, Alan. I think all three of us have today given an interesting oversight to the different challenges that different destinations are facing. And as you pointed out there, for the airline industry particularly, the billions of loss that's happened to that. One airline, Lufthansa alone, 9 billion euros, which is initial bailout. So we've got significant challenges for big businesses to small businesses, to diversification strategies, to environmental issues. Tony, if we can invite you back to join us, because obviously as we're developing, as Asian has to develop a research strategy and what should we focus on? Because clearly going forward from here, as Andy indicated, do we just want to go back to where tourism was? And in many cases, tourism wasn't that great back in 2019 for places like Boracay. So the question has been, how has COVID been a bit of a circuit breaker, and how are we going to think about tourism evolving out of that? Now, as I look at the questions here, there's some interesting questions that's come in. One I'm just going to focus on here has come from the Philippines, from Tina Aquino, which has said, with the pandemic, a lot of challenges were created for the tourism industry. There are many silver linings that have been created. If you had to put the effects of the pandemic in a balance sheet, would there be more pluses or more minuses? Andy, perhaps you'd like to tackle that one first.
Actually, I think it could go both ways. Some of the destinations, because there's nobody going there, are regenerating and giving people, and the businesses that are not really that good are the ones that are closing down first. The ones that are operating at a higher standard will survive. But I think what's going to happen is more people are going to, you have to look at it from the other side. People who usually go to the normal destinations don't want to go there because there's too many people. So they're going to go to secondary destinations, those local, those rural destinations that offer a different kind of experience. So I think that'll take some of the pressure off the major destinations. But the one thing I think we should all keep in mind is, once the pandemic comes to an end, and we hope that soon, there's going to be a large pent-up demand for travel. I think it's going to be an explosion of travel. Everyone is going to say, I want to go on a cruise again. I want to go on a beach again. I want to get on a plane again. But I think that's going to take a little bit longer until that vaccine not only is issued to everybody, but everybody is confident that the world is safe to travel again. But there's going to be an explosion of travel soon.
No, good point there, Andy. And obviously the last major global pandemic was 100 years ago, and the following decade wasn't known as the Roaring Twenties for no reason, if I can put it like that. Alan, what's your thoughts on the balance sheet? Plus, minus?
Yeah, listen, Perry, I think I'm going to take a slightly different tack here. Given that we're part of the first Asian Tourism Research Conference, I think it's a great question for those researchers. I think there's plenty of research opportunity for you to look at what the net effects of COVID are. And as Andy's already said, well, who knows? Tourism has had an opportunity to reset. Let's really see if there's a true reset, or it's going to be more of the same as was presented in one of our 30-minute talk presentations very early in the piece.
Yeah, well, I think that is, it's going to be too early to tell, I think. And that's, one of the things, obviously, with a pandemic like this is that there are obviously some very immediate short-term impacts. Many of those we've gone through or currently going through. The question is going to be in the medium and the long term. Tony, so is this going to be something for the conference and research agenda for you to take on?
I think, Perry, this is, I think it's a situation we found that this is one of the longest temporary decline of the travel and tourism industry. Definitely, this is going to reshape the travel and tourism industry, because the COVID has created an issue of a different income level, different travel pattern, the demography, size, everything is different. So in fact, this is all about something which is unpredictable to us when the medicines are invented. And based on that, I think that the tourism industry is going to reshape significantly. But it definitely, I feel that is different from what's actually in Europe or in part of Asia as well. So this is what is my thought about that.
All right, well, thank you very much. And look, I think this has been another great 30-minute talks. We've had some very interesting different global views. We've been very pleased to be supporting the first Asian Tourism Research Conference and the efforts that you, Tony, and your colleagues at Mahatma Gandhi University have made. This has been a significant step forward for your institution and collaboratively for different institutions. I believe the conference is going to the Philippines next year, is that right?
Yes, it is in Far Eastern University next year.
Fantastic. So a great first step and many more steps to take as we develop research agendas and become more inclusive. And it'll be very interesting to see where we are sitting in a year's time. And I'll be very interested if we play back this 30 minutes, this time next year, whether what we've seen today and been discussing today, we were very foresightful, or whether we'll laugh at ourselves and say, how could we not have seen what was going to come next? So I think that will be quite interesting. Alan, over to you. Some closing comments.
And Tony, I think it's also important just to congratulate you on, not only starting up this initiative and running the first Asian Tourism Research Conference at this time, but running it virtually. I mean, most conferences that have been going for many, many years have struggled to actually run their conference virtually. So congratulations on running your first one virtually.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Alan. Thank you very much, Andy and Perry Hobson. And thank you very much for being part of this conference and support us. So I think everything goes well. This session was great. Thank you very much.
And again,
okay, Tony, well, thanks so much.
We appreciate Tony's support, and of course, we have all of our, not only Tony's support, we have our academic partners' support. So we have a few more to thank, and then we have to remind everyone about the certificates, Perry.
That's right. So we thank some people. So let me just quickly go through some of the others on the list. So my own colleagues at Subway University here in Malaysia, to NCUT, as is known, the National Kaohsiung University of Hospitality and Tourism in Taiwan, to UNLV over in the States, to our friends at LPU, of course, in the Philippines, and UST. So again, thank you so much for your support, and to the Tourism Industry Board Foundation. I think we've got most of those. Andy?
Yeah, and again, we want to remind everyone that today and for the rest of the December, we are offering our e-certificates to everyone who attends. And you have to complete the survey, and the QR code is listed in the bottom left-hand corner. And I'll be putting the link in the chat box soon. But you have to put your 3 key learnings, because normally the e-certificates only went to our academic partners. But we have so many people from so many different countries and schools that we wanted to give everyone the opportunity to have a certificate. But you have to complete the survey that you will come up soon. Alan, what do you think of our certificate? You think they should get one?
Listen, I know that they're in high demand at the moment. And yes, as Dr. Andy has said, make sure you give us the 3 key learnings. I'm sure out of the 3 presentations today, there's been at least one little gem that you might take away. Even if you don't agree, give us your learnings and tell us why you don't agree. So take an opportunity, fill out the survey, and receive one of our in-demand certificates.
Yeah, and I'd just like to thank everybody that's posted questions there. So to thank you very much, Evangeline, for your question. To Van Kishan, I'm sorry we can't get through all these questions, but we've kind of run out of time. And to whoever Galaxy J5 Prime is, it's an unusual name. But many of you have posted some excellent questions there. We tried like to keep the show short. We've gone over time again this week, but we do appreciate you making those questions. And we look forward to engaging with you again next week.
And I'm just in the chat room. I think I made a mistake and put the first link, but I'm putting the link for the survey now. So make sure you get the survey that says Program 34. That's the survey. That'll take you directly to our survey page, and you can put your comments in there. And don't forget, you can also put a quote in there too, if you want to get a quote, and it will show up on our next week's show. And of course, next week we have a different program, and I know Perry's going to tell us about it all. Tell us what's going to happen next week on ranking, Perry.
So next week, we're going to focus on the rankings. And many universities have been very focused, and we have what's called subject rankings, particularly for hospitality and tourism. So the question is, what are the rankings? Where do they come from? Who does them? What's ranked? What are the weightings? What does it mean? Are they important? Is it something you should pay attention to or not? So next week, we're going to be joined by Professor Sao Hung from Edith Cowan University in Perth in Western Australia. And he and I will be bringing forward a discussion on the rankings. So we look forward to you joining us next week to discuss the rankings of hospitality and tourism institutions.
And is that real, Andy? That it'll be show number 34? Unbelievable. I can't believe that we've been doing this for 34 weeks.
Yeah, it's the 34th program. We're looking forward to it. And every week is an exciting program with an interesting topic. And I know our audience always loves it. And we get a lot of very nice comments from those people who attend our programs.
Yep. So thank you again, everybody very much for joining us today. Again, congratulations to Dr. Tony Thomas and the First Asian Tourism Research Conference being held at Macquarie University. So it's goodbye from us for another end of a show for 30-minute talks. And we look forward to you joining us again for show number 34 on the rankings of hospitality and tourism. Do rankings matter? See you next week.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. And don't forget, you can view the videos on our website at www.30minutetalks.com. So visit our website and you can view the videos that we have from all of our programs there. Thank you and take care.
Thank you, everybody. Take care. Keep safe. Until next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.